Let me just now move on to some of the sort of more hot-button topics and talk about Hamas. A lot of people say there's no point negotiating with someone who isn't your enemy, so Israel has to negotiate with Hamas. Other people say there's no point negotiating with someone who doesn't recognise your right to exist. And where do you stand on that?
At the moment, I don't think Israel can negotiate directly with Hamas or that we can do so. The Quartet principles are very clear. The renunciation of violence, the recognition of the State of Israel, the acceptance of previous agreements regarding Israel. And there's no sign of any of those things. I know some people make the case that, maybe this is like Northern Ireland, that you have to talk directly. But I think that only works once people who believe only in violence have come to the view that violence is not going to succeed. And I don't think we have reached that point with Hamas.
So without that, though, Tony Blair's wasting his time. He's getting a suntan, but he's not going to achieve anything.
Well, he may be. Of course, for so many years we've hoped he was wasting his time, and now we actually hope he's using his time productively. It's a strange... I went to see him for a cup of tea, actually, to discuss this a few weeks ago. Well, the first thing he said was, "How are you guys getting on?" I said, "We're getting on a lot better since you cleared out." Which is true. He did not dissent from this view. But it makes his job, of course, much more difficult that there is that division in the Palestinian area, that Gaza is on a different, is run by a different team altogether, with a totally different agenda from the West Bank. Nevertheless, he is trying to make sure that within the West Bank it is possible to show that if Palestinians can run their own security and the economic situation can be improved, then there can be greater confidence on all sides to come to a peace agreement. And of course, we all want Hamas to accept the Quartet principles. It looks like this is going to take time, but it shouldn't stop everybody else talking in the meantime.
OK, well, let's broaden it out a little bit. George, you had high hopes of George Bush when he became president. Do you think he's been a good president?
I saw him... I think he has dealt with some incredibly difficult problems that were thrown almost uniquely to that presidency. I don't agree with every decision he's made. I think he made mistakes in Iraq, but don't underestimate the problems that administration faced when the World Trade Centers were attacked the World Trade Center was attacked in New York. And that was an almost unique challenge for an American administration. Actually, William and I went to see him in London last week. And he remains, as when we first went to see him, in fact you came with us, as when he was the governor of Texas, we went to see him, and he remains in private and in person an extremely engaging, intelligent and thoughtful individual, which is not surprising that he's the President of the United States, but is surprising given his public image.
Say what one might describe as a right intellectual in America, Fareed Zakaria, or one might describe him certainly as on the freedom side of the debate, now says America, in the Sunday Times, you might have seen it, that America is now enfeebled. So a good president, William?
Well, I think if I can also dodge the question, as George did, this is another... This is another display of our teamwork. That,
I have noted it in the book.
We both know when to dodge a question.
It's all got in the book.
He will be judged more kindly by history than he has been by his contemporaries. Let's put it that way. If I was an American, I'd have wished he was more of a fiscal conservative. And I'm sitting next to a fiscal conservative here, the next Chancellor of the Exchequer. And I think...
Possibly the next but one at this rate.
Yes, absolutely. The next but two or three in the next 2 years. Yeah, I stand corrected on that. I think it slightly goes back to our earlier discussion. Sometimes when I sit with Americans, I think they have too much of a monolithic view of the Muslim world, and that there is a single enemy out there. without realizing what vast differences there are between the different Arab nations. You know, the differences between them, culturally and politically, are greater than the differences between any of the European nations from each other. You therefore have to understand the sheer complexity of it. And sometimes there is a tendency to think there is one single entity out there trying to do us down. And we must never relax or underestimate how difficult it is to fight international terrorism. But it's very important to realize the differences between them, to try to detach, say, Syria from Iran, to go back to what I was saying earlier, just as Libya has been flipped over in its international behavior. And I think sometimes the American administration has not been sufficiently open to those possibilities, and that would be my main criticism of its Middle East policy.
So you've now got Obama saying he's going to talk to the Iranians. You've got McCain taking a much tougher stance. It's difficult to know exactly what he means by that, but nevertheless it's a much tougher stance. Who's the Hague candidate in that debate?
Well, thankfully they will turn out to converge, I'm sure, and they are already doing that. Barack Obama, I think, has redefined what he means by talking to Iran, and has made clear that force is still on the table, that he's not renouncing the possibility of that, which is the same position as McCain. And as you know, since we intend to be the incoming government and we'll have to work with either administration, we're not going to pick and choose between the candidates. John McCain is the representative of our sister party. We've had many meetings with him. We get on with him extremely well. But Barack Obama has given a good speech recently about recalibrating the relationship with the United Kingdom, which was exactly what we would have wanted him to say. So we will work with whoever wins.
And as a sort of party strategist, who do you think are you going to sort of suggest the echoes of McCain are in Cameron because of the national duty agenda, or are you going to try to expropriate the kind of change message of Barack Obama? Which way do you tilt in this?
I don't think you can borrow wholesale from one campaign or another. And obviously McCain is running the Conservative campaign, so there are some interesting policy ideas. But probably in terms of simple campaign techniques and innovation, the Obama campaign is the place to look. I mean, it's an obvious thing to say, but it's worth repeating. Their use of the internet is absolutely phenomenal. And the fact that Obama, I was just in the United States this weekend, and he made the decision to forego federal funding. First candidate since Richard Nixon to do that. And the reason he's done that is because he has got, as it's called, his own ATM machine, his like cash point machine, which is this internet connection of donors of something like 3 or 4% of the entire population, who he can just say, I need another $100, and suddenly this money comes in. So to have constructed that kind of internet-based fundraising campaign, and also the work that he does over the internet, in terms of promoting his message, is incredibly impressive, and I think it's something that the Conservative Party should take a very close look at.
One final thing. I know, William, that when you became Shadow Foreign Secretary, one thing that you regretted is you'd have to put the books on hold. But for the rest of us, we were concerned about the piano, because most of us were looking forward to the opportunity of hearing you play.
Not today, I hope.
So I just wondered whether you could tell us how the piano was going as we conclude this session.
Right, well, that's a question out of the blue, isn't it? Yeah, it's come to a total halt. It is one of the sad things about being a politician. It is such an all-consuming thing. For me, going back into the front line has meant no more writing of history books, I haven't lifted the piano lid since the day I became Shadow Foreign Secretary. No more judo, and so on.
So the composer,
on the other hand,
the royalties to the composer of Chopsticks have collapsed.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you very much.
We hope to be busy enough not to lift the piano lid for quite some time.
Well, on that note, thank you very much, George Osborne.